that sounds like it might make us happy, but we should look for things that aren't for the sake of happiness just alone, right?
Fantastic.
Always killing it on the segues.
So let's get into the Less Wrong posts for this week. And the first one is, as Stephen said, not for the sake of happiness alone. Stephen, why do you do things?
I get hungry, satisfy. Have you ever tried not doing things?
Sometimes. It depends on, like, how my body is feeling.
That's where I was going. Like, the longer you go without doing something, the more heroic the effort it takes to do nothing. Eventually, it's like, I have to pee. Am I going to do it here, or I'm going to get up and go do it, right? So,
well, I was going to say it's easier to do nothing when I'm feeling, like, kind of broken down and things are hurting.
Or rather, it's not easier to do nothing, but it's harder to do anything. It's the same thing, but sort of a glass half full.
Damn, I was trying to be funny and light, and you guys
Sorry.
No, you guys brought it home correctly in a heavy way. So let's just put it this way: I do things to make me happy, Inyash.
Do you?
I sure think so, right?
Well, there are ethicists that argue that all human desires are reducible in principle to the desire to see ourselves and others happy. And so the question becomes whether we should care about the things that make us happy on their own, apart from any happiness that they bring. Which, honestly, I think I wish we had Wes on for this, since Wes is one of the wireheaders that believes happiness is the only reason anyone does anything.
We got to have that conversation at some point, for sure. I remember, so I read this post, and as I read that, he mentioned Sam Harris in The End of Faith, and he just mentioned that he did a drive-by at that thought. He didn't, actually explore it. Mm-hmm. He does in The Moral Landscape. And I know Harris didn't use this word, but I know that Julia Galef, I think, summarized it perfectly. If you sub out happiness with eudaimonia, and eudaimonia is happiness minus whatever your philosophical objections are to happiness. So I think if you sub that in and just say that's what we mean when we're talking about happiness here.
I think, Eliezer makes a good analogy with the feeling of making a scientific discovery. Do you think just that feeling is the only thing that's important about scientific discovery? Because eudaimonia sounds like it would remove the actual scientific discovery thing, right? If you could just get the happiness of it?
Yeah, just in a simulation that wire-headed you, the feeling of just getting a scientific discovery every, on a regular basis, and you just sat there in that bliss. I think it's, in my opinion, it's important for your beliefs to be anchored to reality and your feelings.
I think eudaimonia would explicitly say, no, it has to be tied to other stuff.
But aren't you supposed to get rid of the stuff that, the philosophical objections to being happy?
No. If someone asks you, what does eudaimonia mean? It just means happiness. And then if someone's like, oh, well, I've got all these problems like happiness. All right, well, subtract all of those.
Oh, okay.
And just whatever happiness means minus all the baggage you're trying to bag it down with.
Rarely...
if you're like, well, what about happiness except wireheading? Well, then I'm not talking about wireheading, right?
I don't know if this is what you're talking about, but I very rarely experience happiness without a feeling of guilt for feeling happy.
Oh, damn. That's not great.
I also feel bad about feeling bad, which is annoying. I hate having
you just feel bad all the time.
That I just can't access the source code to. I want to... the way you do that is with therapy, time, and reinforcement of, the good kind of happiness. But and maybe there's a way that's sort of similar to wireheading. Like, if I could just go edit my soul with the candle style, that also raises some ethical things.
But do you think there's no value to a scientific discovery then if it doesn't cause any happiness?
No, I totally disagree.
So there's stuff that's valuable outside of happiness?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I were to summarize what I think, if I were to define eudaimonia quickly, I'd say it's the kind of life that, because it's not just about happiness, it's about your life as a whole. Mm-hmm. It's the kind of life that if you could pick, you would pick for yourself and for those you love. Like, that if we get to choose our life, this is the kind we'd all choose. And if that's fuzzy, that's because it was, it's Greek and it was made up by Aristotle, and virtue ethics is not hardly, doesn't have hard definitions, right?
And but happiness doesn't exist as a solid construct somewhere that you could point to.
I was about to say that sounds explicitly like not happiness, and saying it as, it's happiness with the objections to it removed is wrong, because there's things that I would pursue that might make me, less happy, but I want to pursue them anyway.
But you get greater satisfaction out of it, right?
Yeah, but then that's not happiness minus the things that people have objections to. That's a different thing, which I'm okay with. I just don't think we should call it happiness.
Yeah, I liked Julia Galef's quick summary of it just as a quick way to pass through the definition, But if it's not landing, then
We're
totally
getting a
don't
little
stick to it.
hung up on the definitions.
But
it
we're
works.
not entirely, because he does say that for all value to be reducible to happiness, which is what some people were saying is possible, it's not enough to show that happiness is involved in most of our decisions. It's not even enough to show that happiness is the most important consequent in all our decisions. It must be the only consequent. And I think we're all saying, like, it's not the only thing. There's other things, too, that we find important.
I think Eliezer's agreeing with us, too, when he says, I'd be disturbed if people retreated into holodecks and fell in love with mindless wallpaper. I'd be disturbed even if they weren't aware it was a holodeck, which is an important ethical issue. If some agents can potentially transport people into holodecks, substitute zombies for their loved ones without their awareness. Yeah, which is sort of one of...
Should we be disturbed by people retreating into holodecks and falling in love with wallpaper?
I think, yeah, or rather, like, that was the thing that made me question whether friendship is optional. The, like, end of that story was an actual utopia or not, because, I mean, spoilers for a thing that's been out for a long time. The utopia that the super AI ends up creating is everyone's in their own bubble universe, and it's full of NPCs that, because, you know, people get the most happiness if they're surrounded by, if they have friends that are the best possible friends that they could be for that person. And the fact is that most relationships have some conflict, so it would be better to substitute real friends for fake ones that'll make you happier. And that just sounds sad to me. Like, the world is just a bunch of little self-contained universes that are full of fake people. You never get to interact.
One real person in each one that never interacts with another real person in their life.
And I think that's what makes you human. You need the full spectrum of emotions. Happiness without sadness to complement it is... or, like, not, you know, to contrast it against and to give it meaning isn't, I don't think, true happiness.
I don't think you need sadness necessarily.
I think you do. I think you need the full range of emotions in order to experience life. I mean, like, I think that we should try to minimize suffering, and I don't think, like, it's obviously not fun to feel sad, but sometimes it's important. If a loved one died, would you prefer to just continue to feel happy and not be upset about it? It feels like it takes away the meaning of the value that person had for you.
No,
right?
no, absolutely not. But I mean, I also would prefer to never have a loved one die.
Yeah.
And I don't think I need to live in a world where a loved one dies to make my life more experientially rich.
But, I mean, okay, like, that was an extreme example.
Sub that out for, like, something else, you know. You may have...
Well, I don't want to sub it out for someone else.
You may have taken, like, your physical health, like, for granted until you hurt your back.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're like, oh, that was actually really nice when it didn't hurt all the time.
No, I wish... I mean, I guess maybe it's okay to hurt your back and be in pain for, like, a week or something.
I'm not saying you should stay crippled. I'm saying the point is, like, it highlights how awesome it is not to be in pain when you are in pain.
Yeah, sure. I mean, all sorts of fluctuations of emotions are good, I would say. But there's certain extremes that we would, I think, be better off completely without.
100%. I don't think that's
I think we're all in agreement on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, there are some people who are not necessarily in agreement. They're like, oh yeah, you know, there's a reason that there's death in the world, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, I would want to eliminate death, but I wouldn't want to eliminate frustration, disappointment, sadness, anger. They're important emotions, and they're there for a reason. Anger tells you when someone's violated your boundaries and when you need to step in. Frustration can be motivational. Sadness shows that something had meaning and value to you.
These are also all emotions that we seek out on purpose all the time. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever
watch sad movies.
Sat down and watched a sad movie. Exactly right. You're like, you know what? I'm gonna have a bummer afternoon. Let's watch
Saving Private Ryan. Or...
Sure, Old Yeller. I don't know what's a sad movie, but
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that was pretty sad.
Whatever, like, you know, but if you know you're, first time going through this, like, all right, I'm sitting down for a bummer, let's do this. Sometimes you're just in the mood to do that. You know, stretch that muscle.
The movie Inside Out, the Pixar movie, again, I'll spoil a thing that's been out for a while. Now I have to, like, explain it. They personified the, like, three major emotions as characters in this girl's head, so you're sort of watching this girl's life, and then it zooms in on these, like, characters in her brain that are pulling levers and whatnot to make her feel different things. And the happiness character is a control freak and is always trying to, like, make sure that the little girl's always feeling happy and distracting or suppressing all the other emotions. It actually shows that this is really toxic because, like, when you watch her interactions with her parents, they're always like, oh, where's our happy girl? Or, oh, you need to be funny. Like, they were using her as, like...
Yeah.
That felt really creepy to me because I had sort of the same thing where you're using your child to regulate your own emotions. It should be the other way around. The big, like, reveal of the movie was that actually the character's sadness, who was always the one that was being the most marginalized, was the important emotion that the little girl needed in order to realize that she was actually, because she ran away at the end, and like she became really emotionally numb, and then started freaking out, and then got on a bus and ran away. And they needed to trigger this character's sadness to come out in order for her to realize, oh, I still love my family. I'm just sad about this loss of my friends and my old home. And she was able to then come back and have and cry together with her parents. And they had that's sort of what I'm getting at with you need sadness for that.
Mm-hmm.
And for empathy too.
Mm-hmm.
What happened internally in the internal landscape was it's actually pretty dark for a Pixar movie, but they were adventuring for a bit with the little girl's imaginary friend from when she was a child, and the imaginary friend was trying desperately not to be deleted.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, in order to save the little girl, he basically self-sacrifices and dies by jumping into the pit of forgetting. But it's because those characters were able to cry about that together that they were able to come to these realizations about, again, what was meaningful. So that was my rant about an underappreciated, in my opinion, Pixar movie. Anyway, what were you saying?
I did not realize it was underappreciated. I thought
I've heard so many people I didn't like it. I didn't get it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Too intellectual. I don't know.
Oh well,
Or
I mean,
whatever the fuck.
maybe you shouldn't be discussing it with 4-year-olds, but
there's a lot of
emotional
those on the
4-year-olds.
internet.
Yeah. I got a philosophical question about this friendship's optimal thing. What if the NPCs were complex enough that they weren't just always making you feel happy and joyful, but you sometimes did feel sad and frustrated and had to struggle against other things, so that you had the full range of emotions, but it was only you in there, and no one else existed, although you didn't know that because you did get the full range of emotions.
The thing that makes it really complicated, and why I said I'm still unsure whether that was a dystopia or a utopia, is the AI was supposedly powerful enough that she could see exactly what things would make you happy, as long as she could, deliver them through friendship and ponies.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually there were some characters, there were these two characters that started playing the game in the very beginning, when it was before the Earth had been turned into paper clips, but ponies. And they were separated from each other because they weren't making each other optimally happy as much as the other NPCs that the AI could create. But she, over time, directed from behind the scenes their sort of emotions and motivations enough that she merged their universes together and they were able to meet each other again and started rebuilding their friendship. But it was because she had manipulated them into doing that, because she calculated that if they got to become friends again. So it was I
guess the question
can't figure it out, actually. I don't have a yes or no answer for this. It's complicated.
I do.
Yeah, what's your answer?
It's not one that I think I don't have a rational bedrock to defend it on, but I have this sentimental attachment to reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone shoved me in a AI, what was the
your bubble
experience
universe.
Machine?
The Matrix?
The Equestria experience.
Sure, yeah. The Matrix experience machine or whatever. Without asking and I didn't know about it, I'd be pretty bummed if I found out.
She required consent for everything, but the thing is that she also could manipulate people so that they would give consent, because then she could better satisfy her own values of having more people be satisfied by ponies and friendship.
I don't think consent is a real thing when you're dealing with an entity that is wildly and more intelligent than you. It can talk you into accepting anything, including destroying your brain and saying you'll never get to see your friends and family again. That sounds like a good idea.
That's exactly what she did.
I know. So it's not the sort of thing you'd ordinarily consent to if you weren't being out-reasoned by a super intelligence.
I guess if you're saying, or if someone were to say that even being in a world that is fully complex, you can't tell that the NPCs aren't real people, and you still get all the varieties of emotion with sadness and frustration and all that. If even that still is a sad future if you don't interact with any other real people, then one of the things this person values is interactions between real people, regardless of, happiness or other values.
She would let them do that, though, because she actually could read their brain and determine what things. So if they lied about that, then she would give them NPCs and say they were real. But if they genuinely valued that, she'd let them interact with other real people. Just it happened that most people were happier when they were interacting with more idealized fake people.
No, I know she would, but as an outside observer, one of us might say that is a bad future. And the reason we would say that is because we intrinsically value just people interacting with other real people for some reason, regardless of the other outcomes of those interactions.
Yeah, that I would say that's a good summary of my position. I don't value that above literally all else. Like, I wouldn't want, okay, we've got an apocalypse world where it's, worse than the land of Fallout, and, we've got 24 humans left, and they get to have real interactions. Isn't that great? I think I'd rather have 1 billion people living in separate simulations, right? And no, I don't have a hard cutoff for how many people and the exact number of utils per human or whatever. But I do have that as a value. I think that it's important. I like talking with real people. I think another way to demonstrate this point is, like, if you woke up right now and you found that the last 40 years of your life have been a dream, would you be happy that you're back in reality, or would you be bummed that this was all,
I would actually be really bummed. I would miss you and Charlie and a bunch of other things and people.
Same here. Isn't that weird? Because that seems to contradict what I just said. I suppose if it was like the context of every other dream that I have here, in what I think is real life, and it fades, and then the context of the rest of my life comes back, that'd be one thing. Maybe I'd deal with it better or something. But yeah, it is weird. I feel like this matters.
I think that's the
right?
existential horror of playing a game of Roy.
Yeah.
You wake up after your entire life and you're like, where's all the people I loved and things I did?
Where's my wife?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, yeah, that fucked me up. I think
Okay.
So let's go on. I had a thought, and then it might come back. But
The another thing that he says in here is that when I'm deciding where to steer the future, I take into account not only the subjective states that people ended up in, but also whether they got there as a result of their own efforts, because that is something that is important to Eliezer, that he calls it freedom, the ability to get places as a result of your own efforts. First of all, I kind of think I agree with that too, but does this have implications for UBI?
I think UBI is less about, like, saying, look, you all now have everything taken care of. You never have to lift a finger your whole life. The robots will bring food to your mouth while you sit on your hover car, right? That functions as a toilet as well. Like, I think it's more just like
In the real transition future, you just don't have to shit anymore.
Right. But I think, at least my version of UBI that I imagine is, like, you're not one, slip on some, uneven pavement away from losing your house and, starving to death, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's just a safety net.
Yeah.
having you weren't finished.
I was going to give, like, an example of getting through with your own effort. You start a new video game and you can run to a high level area and get your ass whooped. You can go online, find a cheat code, and then go in and kick that boss's ass, or you go off and grind for 60 hours, and then you come back and you show that boss who's boss, right? The second one seems more rewarding. Maybe I set it up that way too heavily.
I think you're right. I played The Sims, like an old version of The Sims. I remember it being really cool at the time. I did a few playthroughs where I was just playing it normally, and some friend came over that was like, "Oh, do you know the cheat code where you can just keep adding $1,000 to your account?"
Oh.
And it was super fun for a few hours because you just got to, like, buy the biggest mansion and, like, skip all of the conflicts. But then after, like, a few hours, you're like, there's nothing else to do in this game, and it didn't feel rewarding. It just, like, it felt fun for a bit being, like, playing Millionaire, and then it's like, and that's it, though. There's nothing else to do now. And it didn't really feel like, if you had gotten the giant mansion after having spent, like, several generations of Sims, working and having the children make more than the parents and get better grades and like that, then, like, it feels like you earned it, and then it's like much cooler of an achievement.
I have, like, two opinions on this, I guess. The first thing is I want to agree with Steven that, like, it's that UBI isn't a thing that takes away meaning. Like, it just means you have enough to eat and shelter over your head no matter what.
I think that's a human right, or it should be.
Well, yeah, and you still have to, like, if you want to be well known for being a musician, you have to make good music. If you want to carve a beautiful face into a mountain, you still have to go out there and carve the face in the mountain, right? The UBI isn't going to do any of that stuff for you.
It's just going to make sure you don't suffer and die.
Right. But then also, like, most people in their lives don't do those sorts of things. The thing that a lot of people do find meaning in their life from is being there for their family and helping support them and, giving them an education and a roof and taking care of them when they're sick and helping them out in times of trouble. And a UBI would, like, take that away, sort of. Like,
does it? I don't think so. I mean, you can still spend time with your family, and
you can spend a lot of time with them, but then there's less of the feeling important because your family literally needs you. Like, no one needs you anymore when...
I think the two-parent trap and just, differential socioeconomic statuses from things that are not really under your control is really sad. I think it's really upsetting when, as I mentioned, the two-parent trap, two parents have to work, they leave their kids with a nanny or dump them off at a preschool or daycare, and then they're spending, they're spending their time and effort getting the resources for their families, but those kids probably would have benefited from more time with their parents in like a worse house or at a worse school.
Yeah, well, I mean, also that gets the nuclear family is terrible, and we shouldn't have that. But that's a different discussion. I guess like needing is kind of a trap, because if you need someone, then like we just were talking about in the frame control thing, like need can be.
We haven't talked about it yet.
Oh, well, I might put this afterwards so that we can talk about it.
Time travel.
Yeah. You like, if you need somebody, then they have a lot of power over you. You don't want to have to necessarily need someone, because then you're beholden to them. But on the other hand, like, being needed is really important and fulfilling as well. So
as a species, we are interdependent, and I think that's an important thing about us. Having families, communities, friendships, social or romantic relationships is part of what makes us human and what gives us value.
I just feel dirty saying that, like, it's important to need people, because like right away that sets up a lot of abuse alarms in my head.
I think it is, but like you want to be interdependent, not codependent. You want to be like, there's a healthy version of being needed, helping others, and being able to ask for help when you need it.
I think a lot of people just feel like their lives are meaningless and they're floating through them because they don't feel like anyone needs them, and that's an important human psychological need.
Something Steven said before that really I've been like saying this to other people recently, because I just got a job after being like having some temp jobs that weren't really making enough money, but
fuck yeah, you did.
Yeah. Steven said, I want to like not necessarily like be wealthy. I just want to like have the comfort of being able to go to the grocery store without needing to check my bank balance first. Having been in that state again for a bit was really stressful, and I like didn't even realize how stressful it was until I got a job and started being like, I better not buy a second drink because like, it's kind of expensive here. Oh wait, no, I have a job. I can, or like, I don't know if I should go out tonight. Oh wait, no, I can. It's just this like, I can like make choices that aren't constrained by anxiety about whether I'm going to be able to pay rent or buy groceries.
Yeah.
And I think that, well, two things.
So you weren't worried, you guys aren't worried at all about the UBI diminishing or removing the interdependence of humans?
No, that's what I was just going to say. I think I want to bring up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and say that what I think UBI will do is raise people to the level of subsistence. And it could be comfortable subsistence. There are a lot of people who would prefer to just sort of live comfortably and don't have higher aspirations than that. But I think that's not the majority of people. So it's going to eliminate the suffering, and money anxiety, a lot of broken things about the job economy, like, the fake jobs that are out there, etc. Yeah. But it will still give people the opportunity to go above and beyond if they want to create art, or if they strive to make a lot of money because they have some particular goal. Maybe they want to buy a yacht or whatever the heck they want.
I mean, I think
it'll just improve human experience so much.
If all we care is about is subsistence, I feel like we're kind of almost already there in America.
I think we don't, though. That's why I brought up Maslow's hierarchy, because it, goes from food, shelter, water, like the basics, and then all the way up to self-actualization, which...
yeah, but I guess what I was getting at is that if UBI is supposed to just provide basic subsistence, there's almost no chance of anyone in the United States dying of malnutrition if they don't, unless they're a very vulnerable person that can't take care of themselves, and whoever is taking care of them is neglectful.
There's some pretty miserable, impoverished people in the U.S.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't argue that, but they're not going to die from lack of calories.
I mean, you see homeless people all the time in Denver and
I do see homeless
areas.
people, but I think homeless people count as the vulnerable populations that can't take care of themselves, that aren't being cared for, as opposed to a regular person who doesn't have enough ability to get food.
I think my life would be vastly improved if I didn't have to spend half of it, or 8 hours a day, or the new job I'm taking is 55 hours a week.
Oh, damn.
So like, I mean, I kind of want that right now. I I want some distraction,
Yeah.
but like people can work because they love what they do or because they have a goal, not because they need to spend most of their life scrambling around doing some bullshit to just basically survive. I think that that's a that's a vast improvement, and it can give them more time to climb up that hierarchy to get to the finding meaning, developing hobbies, forming close friendships, being there for your family, self-actualizing. That's the stuff that makes you really happy, and subsistence is like better than being impoverished, but it's not like, I'm ecstatically happy that I can just, survive. Like, most humans want more than that. Like,
Yeah, subsistence, I think, isn't just about, like, I'm about to die from lack of water. I think it's, like, there's some amount of security that comes with knowing that, like I said, you're not one trip away from, one slip and fall away from losing your place of where your home, your future,
yeah,
right?
You don't have chronic background money anxiety like, keeping you from going out and hanging out with your friends or.
It turns
getting a
out
nice
that that's
meal.
actually like an enormous drain on people's psyches,
It
right?
sucked.
So yeah,
Hadn't been in that place in a while. I forgot how much it sucked.
yeah. So I think it's less just about like, oh look, it's
I just think all those things will still exist under UBI. Because you'll get just barely enough to live, which is, we basically have that right now. If people are willing to live in a shit-ass, rundown shack with a couple of dirty roommates and, eat off food stamps and get crap Medicare healthcare, they can live without working.
I don't think most people like being in that state, though.
No one likes being in that state. It's awful. That's
think
why
that
you
they-
get the stress and the anxiety of like, oh
Yeah.
God, I can't go out. I need to check my bank balance before I go to the grocery store. But I'm just saying, like, if what UBI is supposed to provide is just basic subsistence, then people are still going to have that anxiety of like, oh God, I can't go out and have a drink. I can't.
at least it sets that as the floor, right? Rather than you have to work 60 hours a week to get to that floor.
Yeah.
If you're working at low-paying jobs, and you're trying to live in a city, like I've talked to people who just like don't seem to understand that. Like, oh well, you shouldn't live in a city then. You're right. I should just pick up my shit and walk
It's expensive
1,000
to
miles away to a cheaper part of the country.
Yeah.
Like
Where they have a job for me to do.
exactly. Like
In my car that I own.
right. That's why I said walk. Right. I mean, yeah. So that there's not an easy solution. And yes, like eventually moving to a cheaper area might be a good move, but it's not like a good starting position for a lot of people.
If you're in that kind of impoverished situation anyway, it's likely you don't have, like, you might have mental issues or substance abuse or whatever, and you probably don't have the executive function to even figure out how to move to Wisconsin or wherever, because it requires, like, going online now and finding a house. They do an income check. Finding a job. Like, all this is pretty much online now. If you don't have a smartphone or a computer, you could theoretically go walk to your local library and use that, but then you have to get a library card and then you have to provide, like, it's just, there's a lot of barriers towards upper mobility for these, like, people.
I guess, and we got way off topic, but the one thing I just have been thinking lately about UBI is that I want a UBI. I think it is definitely a huge net good, but I also don't think it'll change life in any meaningful way for anyone who's listening to this podcast.
Imagine, like, if you're making $1,200 a month, and then your UBI comes in for $1,000 a month. Suddenly, but you're surviving on $1,200, right? Suddenly, you've got almost twice as much money. That will change people's lives.
It would change my life. Imagine, someone who is just working sort of hand to mouth at Save-A-Lot or whatever as a cashier, and they come home exhausted. They have kids. That's all they can do because they're at their limit. If you gave them UBI, they might be able to go to online university, learn accounting, and like move up a social strata.
I guess the difference is that in my imagination, I thought UBI was taking the place of all the other government programs as opposed to being added in addition to them.
I mean, it probably would be, and I think I'm okay with that, unless I have a little bit of hesitation about it taking away some welfare programs that
That's what I was
like
going to say.
said.
If it replaces other programs, I don't think it'll make any real difference.
I think it still will, but
I mean, I do think it's net good to have it rather than the welfare programs, because all the means testing and stuff's awful.
the thing you said about I don't think it is going to help anyone on this podcast. First of all, I think that's not true, or who is listening to it. I know some people that are struggling financially, and it's not because they're dumb. It's because they have, like I said, executive function things, or they've got other shit going on in their health, their families, whatever. But also, even if that were true, I still want it to help, like, the homeless people that I meet, the, like, people with autism or Asperger's who, like, can't get a job because they don't have that ability and don't have the luxury of having family members who will take care of them their whole lives. Like, that's who I care about.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that I don't care about the people listening to this podcast. I think you're all great, but, like, I'm hoping that, like, you also, you listeners would be okay with UBI. Okay, never mind.
Okay.
We should probably
We should
go
move
to the
on.
next one.
Okay, I guess the main thing the thing I ended this post with was that when I learned that there were people who did think all value is reducible to happiness and were good with wireheading, I was kind of surprised they existed. Like, when I first read this post, I was like, I don't understand why this is here. This is just obvious common sense, and I guess I was wrong. I was surprised this was controversial.
Yeah, I wish that there was some... I mean, of course, the problem is that... Well, I wish there was a way that you could just simulate what it would actually feel like to be in this, like, I only feel happiness about everything state, so people could realize that it's completely unfulfilling, because I think it would be. I already gave my argument for why I think the full range of human emotions are important. But then again, like I said, if you could simulate it, you'd basically have built a wirehead, and there probably were some people that would be susceptible to just being like, no, keep the helmet on, I just want to live like this forever. I don't think they'd benefit from it, but I do think they should have that choice, but I don't know. Again, it's kind of like, if you were able to give everybody heroin all the time without it killing them, like, should you?
I think a wireheader might reply that said if they put it on and then they realized, oh, this is super unfulfilling, they would say that's not a good wirehead helmet, right? It's supposed to make you feel fulfilled.
Well, that's because they believe that happiness equals fulfillment, and I think that's a false premise.
Or whatever else. Like, I'm not a wireheader, but I imagine, like, if you say, no, you'll actually be unhappy with this helmet, they're saying, then it's not the right helmet that I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm talking about one that'll actually make me actually happy.
Well, then they'd have to define what actually happy means.
Yes.
And I think that they can't.
That might be the case.
Shots fired. I'll fight you.
All right, the next post is Leaky Generalizations. Should I just do my quick summary?
Sure.
Okay, my summary, I pulled out this line. Do humans have 10 fingers? Most of us do, but plenty of people have lost a finger and nonetheless qualify as human. Practically every generalization used in the real world will be leaky.
Gender.
And the entire post, as far as I could tell, was like, that's it? It's basically shit's complicated, and I wasn't sure what to say about that aside from like, oh, okay, yeah, shit's complicated. I'm not sure why there's a whole post saying shit's complicated, but I guess maybe it's setting up things for later.
I think that there's a post because some people probably say that, no, it's not.
Yeah, like you were talking about the wireheaders, where I think there are some people that think that you can make these big generalizations, and I disagree. Maybe there are some things, if somebody could find something where they're like, this one's not complicated, it's super easy. Maybe some mathematical concepts are like that, but things that aren't like, algebra or whatever, things like weather, human psyche, just are complex and chaotic and hard to understand, and there's not like a way that you can really, really simply sum it up or explain it. I don't know. Even like I'm thinking about the way that they teach particle physics in school, where there's the billiards ball model, because that's like the first model that you can grasp very easily as a young kid when you're learning, or as someone who's new to it, and then you start to get into like relativity, where you're like, well, yeah, okay, so it's not really actually these little billiard balls revolving around other ones. It's actually like this cloud of probabilities where there's these things that are there and not there at the same time, and then they can become entangled, and then like there's layers of complexity that go on top of that, and it's just complicated all the way down. I think that life especially, and just like the world, are like that. But as humans, I think we have this dangerous tendency to want to simplify everything, and I think it's also a good tendency. Again, like, it's a good way to teach particle physics by making a simple model and then just keep continuing to add it to it. But I think the danger comes when you're like, the simple model is the whole model, and this is all the information we need.
Yeah, I think as long as you keep in mind that like things are leaky and generalizations are generalizations, then it's okay to use them. Like, it is okay to say humans have 10 fingers.
And it's okay to say death is bad, but it's also okay to say you should kill Hitler.
Right.
Like, I mean, I think that, I don't know if the SSC post categories are made for the man, not man for the categories links to this, but it could, right?
We should link to it in the show notes just in case it doesn't.
Okay.
Or I was thinking that post should should point to this, but it might not. But the point is like, I think I imagine that this was written because some people think that things are simple and like, oh no, it's easy, but it's often actually not. Like,
oh, there's an XKCD comic about that too that I'll see if I can find.
Nice.
The link.
I had a random philosophical question. If we want to just do that and pivot away from this, or unless you wanted to keep on.
No, I just, I like the idea that as long as you can keep in your mind that generalizations are leaky and they are generalizations, it's handy to have them often.
Totally.
Yeah.
I agree.
I did have a thing to say about that, but I want Steven to go first.
All right.
Well, mine's actually less related, so you go ahead, Chase.
I jokingly, but not jokingly, whispered gender because this is a thing that I run into all the goddamn time when people debate gender, or they try to say gender's chromosomes, or gender is, I don't know, like it's biology, it's genitalia and secondary sex characters. Like, we don't actually, gender is a bunch of different things, and they vary even in the wild. You get people with XYY, or XXX, or XXXX, or XXXXX. That's the real thing. Look it up. Lizards have like...
I think if you Google that many X's, you're just going to get porn.
I think you need 3, but I'm just saying, like, genetics are weird. You get people who have, what do they call it, ambiguous genitalia, or like intersex. You get people with hormonal differences, and the thing is, like, you can pretty much change one gender to the other by providing or blocking the, like, estrogen or testosterone. So it's like, it's squishy, it's complicated, and people really, really want to generalize it because they want to argue about whether or not, like,
I think
your gender identity is valid or, whatever. And I'm just like, there's a really great post that I can link to. I might have done it in, like, the other time we talked about being transgender, but it's called Gynandromorphic Chickens, and why gender is complicated or something like that. I'll see if I can dig it up.
I think in general, like, I don't care about gender anymore. I'm like, gender is like politics. You can have whatever one you want.
High five.
But I think in generalizations, like, you can pretty easily generalize that the human species basically has the 2 sexes, and that it's a leaky generalization.
It's very leaky.
Yeah, and there's exceptions and edge cases and whatever, but it's as good a generalization as humans have 10 fingers. Basically true.
Yeah. No, I think I get what you're saying. Like, as a trans person, I also get a bit annoyed when people are like, they were fighting against, like, pussy hats, because they're like, well, some women don't have pussies. And I'm just like, come on. Like, or, like, menstruating people, or, like, pregnant people, where I'm like, I want to have kids.
I personally identify as an ejaculator, thank you.
Yeah.
Squirting doesn't count.
Oh, damn it. Yeah. As a sperm ejaculator?
There you go. Okay. So this actually, first off, the pussy hat thing that was like 2016, the, like, Russia's ruining our discourse kind of, like, was at the forefront of my mind at that time.
I wonder if Russia actually started that meme.
Well, no, that's my thing, is that when the second that movement the march hadn't finished that day, before people were already, like, chewing their, ripping their own tails off about this, I was wondering, like, that was my first thought, is like, was this engineered? Like, did some group of people hit the blogs immediately to just ruin this before it could even get off the ground?
Right.
Or did it just happen naturally? I have no idea. But I'm glad you talked about the gender thing, because that was actually the random philosophy thing I was going to bring up. In last week's reading in Worth the Candle, there was a sword that I think did extra damage if it was wielded by a woman or by a girl. And of course, Raymer had a problem with this, and then it led to this argument with Tiff and all this and that. And I thought that, like, that this would be kind of just a fun little tie-in, because it's we talked about it briefly on the show, but that show goes on for hours anyway, and we couldn't really figure out, like, what circumstances would work. But I don't think that's the point. Like, the point is, like, any generalization you have is leaky enough, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think the reason we tried to speculate, like, why this became an argument at the D&D table, probably because Raymer was like, fuck that, or like, what if I put on a bra, does that count? Like,
I'm sure I want the bonus.
I'm sure Raymer wanted the damage bonus, right? So he's like, how do I get this? I don't know where I was going with that question, unless it somehow tied back to leaky generalizations.
Well, this is kind of how I feel about TERFs, when they're like, what if trans women are just going through years of horrible dysphoria and depression? They're, committing suicide at these high rates, going on hormones, getting surgical changes, and getting their name and their birth certificate changed just so they can go in women's bathrooms and peep on them. I'm like, there's easier ways to do that.
I mean, I've done it. You can just walk into a woman's bathroom.
Yeah, I've done that. Not frequently, but
No,
you know,
it's happened once or twice.
Yeah, occasionally nature calls and it won't take no for an answer, right? So you're like,
I want to just desegregate bathrooms because like it's just such a niche. Like, okay, there's like creepy men that want to spy on women or be creepy to them, and they're everywhere and they're doing it all over the place. There's like no reason to specially privilege bathrooms. Just let like people. There's tons of like just single gender bathrooms that everything is generally fine in. Also, like the whole like trans woman or like someone who's cross-dressing going to like peep on women is like, I think it doesn't really happen, or it's probably happened rarely because every terrible
Everything
thing you
will
can
happen
think
once
that someone might do like will happen, but it's just not an issue. And it's so weird when people make that they're like J.K. Rowling cough like their primary issue. I'm like, there's so many real issues you could be worried about instead.
I wonder, like, so
also
I've worked at like a couple of small restaurants, and they have a couple of bathrooms. And I think they were labeled gender neutral, but because they only had room for one occupant at a time.
It's actually illegal in Denver to have a single occupant bathroom that is gender segregated now.
Really?
This was 10 years ago, and this was in
Some
Fort
people aren't
Collins,
following it though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the reasoning for that could be. Maybe
Why would you gender segregate something that only has one toilet in it?
maybe one
Because
has
propriety.
I mean, it might have a urinal and a toilet.
But if it doesn't,
yeah, I don't know. I'm not a
People are
business
like they
owner.
have cooties about gender.
I mean,
But-
there were building codes that specified you had to have separate facilities, but I don't know if they apply to just single toilet
Single toilet bathrooms
Maybe they might have. I don't know.
have to be gender neutral.
Well, yeah, I think that's why I brought that up, because I think it's a no-brainer if if it's a single occupant bathroom, then it's like, who cares who's in there, right? Just
so many people.
Well, then they shouldn't. But like,
I know they're dumb.
as long as you're putting your waste in the toilet, who cares? Like, but if it does if you can fit more people in there, then I think that there's a really funny comedian I saw, and I forget her name. YouTube recommends YouTube comedians to me all the time, so I see several new ones a day.
YouTube algorithm's dangerous.
Yeah, I don't spend too much time on it, so I'm not too worried about it. But the
hate all algorithms.
the comedian looked like a young boy, but it was in fact a woman who identified as a woman, and she's like, I'm not, her joke, not mine. She says, I'm not a guy, I'm just a lesbian, and she had said that she wouldn't care which bathroom she went into, because like if she goes into a girl's bathroom, like she sometimes get eyebrows raised from other women or whatever, and she's like, I would just use the boys' room, but I don't want people to think I'm taking a shit every time. Like,
That's a legit concern that I've heard other trans guys bring up. They're like, if I go in the stall, then people are gonna like just hear peeing, and then they're gonna be. I'm like, nobody has ever cared.
I always go in the stalls unless like I really have to pee, and only urinals are available.
There's a lot of cis guys who just don't want to pee in public and use the stall to pee, and like it's fine, and nobody is. Except for maybe J.K. Rowling, like in the bathroom with a cup to where you're listening to make sure that there's pooping sounds going on. That's insane.
I think people are. I think as somebody who also uses a stall when available and hasn't. I've worked from home for so many years. It's occurring to me more and more lately that like that might be actually having an effect on me. But where was I going with this? Just a general question about, I wonder why there's like this anxiety about using the bathroom in front of other people, and I've got to think it's just like a vulnerability moment. Like for 45 seconds, I'm vulnerable to attack. Is that part of it, you think?
I think it's the same reason we have hang-ups about nudity, because like people are in denial about the fact that we have bodies and like unflattering bodily functions.
I don't mind nudity.
Nudity, sex, using the toilet. Like I think that we'd be way better as a society if we could just chill the fuck out about all that.
Yeah, I agree. I've been in quite a few public nudity situations, and I don't mind. I don't like peeing right next to someone. It's just a very uncomfortable, awkward.
Yeah, it's something weird.
Yeah,
it's like societally that way. I would say like
maybe it's only awkward because society always has said it's awkward, and you should feel awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was looking for a deeper reason, because it seems like it's so common.
Well, it's like
I mean, what are you supposed to do? Like, you turn to the guy and like, nice penis. I see it's also urinating. Like,
great.
You just stand there in silence and look straight ahead, or I don't know. That's the weird part, that you're not supposed to even acknowledge that you're peeing or something.
Well, what about when you go in an elevator, and that's also really awkward because you don't like know if you should talk to the person.
But you're not holding your dick in the elevator. Well, you shouldn't be.
But I mean, I'm saying that it's the same like level of awkwardness sometimes.
Minus the dick holding. I mean, like, I think the paramount example is like, all right, so you've got 3 stalls or 3 urinals. You're at the you never pick the middle one if you go in and they're all available.
This is the same
'cause that's
thing
a
that people
dick
do
move.
when they're seating. Like, though, if you're going in the movie theater, everyone will sit one seat apart from each other, or they'll sit maximally apart from each other until they're forced to sit next to each other by, like, the seats.
But the person who comes in, so yeah, you've got the 3rd row at the theater all to yourself because you're going to a 2 p.m. matinee, and somebody comes in, there's no one else in the theater, and they sit right next to you.
Right.
Who's this psychopath?
And you consider that
Yeah.
to be antisocial.
I consider that to
totally.
be outright hostile.
Yeah. I don't know.
Similarly,
it's just-
if I'm using a urinal and I'm at the rightmost one, and the leftmost one is available, but someone comes and uses the one next to me, that feels like an attack.
I mean, this strikes me as, like, the same reason that people don't like women breastfeeding in public, because breasts.
And that's you know,
I've never understood why people had a problem with that, but I don't know.
Because breasts are for sex, right? Not for feeding babies.
I mean, they're for both.
Nudity, propriety.
I think that it is probably the like propriety thing where I think it's distinct because I don't think it's a fear reaction because that's what would keep me from peeing, you know, in like the high school bathroom during like the 4 minutes between classes. You have to rush to the bathroom with all the 100 other kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think the breastfeeding thing was more like, you know, tits are erogenous and that's, you know, that's private.
Yeah, or like, ew,
I
that's
don't think it's a
gross.
good reason. I'm just trying to invent it, you know, or trying to picture where it's coming from.
Where I'd draw a line if I was, like, reinventing society is people just, like, shitting or peeing everywhere. Like,
Right.
I don't care about seeing or like, hearing other people, like, but they should be putting it in a receptacle because it's a biohazard.
Yeah.
Like, the thing with, like, people being like, ew, that's gross if someone's breastfeeding, I'm like, that's not a biohazard.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I think that just comes from misaligned yuck reaction, or yuck training, right?
Disgust reaction.
Yeah.
As someone who had or who still has seasonal allergies, but goes out a lot less than I used to, how do you feel about people like spitting on the ground outside sometimes?
Fucking hate it. Biohazard.
Okay.
Human mouths are disgusting.
I mean, sure, but like I'm getting all snotty and shit, and it's clogging up my breathing passages, and I got to get it out.
Use tissues.
I
don't
don't
have
think
tissues
that
outside.
mouths
Carry
are that
tissues.
much dirtier.
I can't carry tissues. It's not physically possible.
I carry tissues everywhere. They
Right.
have these, like, portable
You
tissues that
are
fit in your
a
pocket.
superhuman with strange technology.
And carries a backpack. But
you can put them in your
but here's
pocket.
the thing: if spitting on the ground outside is gross, you know, I got to think that a baby breastfeeding, there's spit that's going to make it to the ground, to the bench that she's sitting on.
Unlikely. You're probably sitting, and you probably have, like,
Babies
a
are gross.
blanket.
Babies
I mean,
are
I think
gross.
that if saliva shouldn't, if you're not supposed to spit outside, you shouldn't be allowed to bring your babies outside either. Babies put their hands in their mouths and they get spit everywhere.
that's actually probably sort of a good analogy. Though. Like,
I was hoping I could beat you on the absurd, but
For that matter, you shouldn't bring your dogs outside. They literally crap out there.
I love Denver, and I love that Denver is such a dog-loving city, but also I despise the fact that there's so many people that would just let their dog shit everywhere. I like to walk barefoot, and
that's a bad
or just
idea.
walking like in public places in general. I have to always be looking down to make sure I'm not about to step in dog shit.
I mean,
Clean up
even-
your dog shit,
Even
people.
if people clean up the dog shit, you know there's been dog shit somewhere on that ground in the past 2 weeks.
I don't care if it's been there. I want them to clean it up.
but
'Cause-
you know, if it's a wet shit, you can't get it all right. They can just they can make a good effort.
But it biodegrades, and like sun,
Yeah.
will, especially the sun here because it's a fucking laser. Will like
Well,
soil is all decomposed like dead shit, and
spit
actual
biodegrades a
shit.
lot faster than shit does.
I just
You
don't like
know?
when people do it around me. The same reason I don't like when people cough or sneeze without like covering their mouth because particulates get around.
And cover your mouth, for the love of God, with your elbow. I've seen people still
with
cough,
their
like
hand.
sneeze right into their hands.
And then like open a
And
door.
then like just, hey friend.
I don't know. I might have been at the grocery store in the last few months or something. Someone, I don't know where I would have seen a human, but someone pulled down their mask. Someone pulled down their mask to sneeze into their hands and pull their mask back up.
Nice.
And I was like, is this a fucking TV show? That was insane. Yeah.
Although to be fair, being stuck in a mask with mucus all over the inside of it has got to be unpleasant.
It sucks, but
I
that's
pull mine
that's
down
why
and
that's
use
why
a
it's,
tissue. and
that's
then
why you
throw
use a
the tissue
mask.
away.
That's why you have a spare mask to switch out the mask right away.
Yeah, or you just bear with it until you get out of the store. That said, I think the punishment for leaving dog shit out should be that dog shit goes into your house.
Yes.
If it's
Agreed.
discovered, we get to throw it through your open window.
Do you get
And
to
you're not allowed to
push
close
the
the window.
human's face in it and go, bad. Bad dog owner.
That might actually be over the top. I think I could actually stand by my actual proposed solution. No, you open your door. We take like a a pooper scooper and just like fling it into the open door. That's the punishment. That'll teach them to pick it up real fast, and it's not like torturous assault like it would be if you shoved their face in it.
Yeah.
It's like, no, now you got to clean it out of your carpet.
I will say the thing that most makes me hate urinals is the fact that there's like never any toilet paper near them. I do not want to have damp underwear, and you can't dab if there's no toilet paper by you.
I've been wondering about that.
Fun fact, yeah, no matter shanking, gets the last drop out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why if I really, really have to go, I'll use a urinal. But then I'm like, well, I'm going to be kind of uncomfortable and feel gross for a while. Lots of people seem to just not care.
I guess you could carry tissues with you.
We covered this. It's not physically possible.
I think this was our most fun LessWrong sequence post.
I'm glad we brought it to just a funny
portion
place
ever.
at the end because we were getting a little dark with the first one.
Yeah.
That was great.
All right, so next time, our 2 LessWrong sequence posts will be The Hidden Complexity of Wishes, a classic, which also is an audio format, so you can listen to it. We'll link it. And Lost Purposes.